Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my Dragon Stug 3 D build. In this video we're going to have a look at tracks, also how to distress the tyres on the wheels, and a few other bits and bobs around the lower hull. Now for me, one of the chores of any tank build are the tracks. With the Magic Link tracks of Dragon, I've never been a big fan of them and never been able to get on with them, so I always replace my tracks with metal ones, and in this particular case we're going to be using the full model ones. For those of you who are a little bit wary of metal tracks or never used them before, I'll try and give you some pointers on how to put them together, because the benefits far outweigh any plastic comparison tracks. So what you get in the box, you'll get two sets of links, one for the right side, one for the left side. Friul are pretty good, they do give you quite a few extra. You'll also get, depending on the tracks, either 4mm or 5mm, sorry, 0.4 or 0.5mm wire, which basically you would cut down into lengths to insert in between each track link. So really, as I said before, because it's a chore, every time I come to the bench I'll try and prepare about 10 at a time, and then hopefully by the time the lower hull is finished, or even the model is finished itself, then all of the track links would have been put together. As you can see, it's a good quality track link. Be aware that there's only one tooth on this, because that's quite important when we come to the painting stage. I've cleaned up one or two of these already. They're not too bad, there's a little bit of flash on there but not a lot. And then it's really just a matter of, depending on whichever tracks you have, either getting a 0.4mm or 0.5mm drill bit. I recommend you get the tungsten tip ones, and then carefully just drill out the holes of any flash, both ends, obviously with the wider end being careful not to go all the way through to the other side, because with a metal link track there will be a nut on each end. Okay, so once you've done that, I personally get a tongue depressor, put some double-sided sticky tape on it. Then with the tweezers, it's just a matter of picking them up and placing them one by one on the sticky tape, making sure that you keep them in line. There we go, it's 2, 3, and once you get the rhythm going, it doesn't take too long at all. And like I say, I'll do about 10 of these each time I visit the bench. And then once I've got all of the links put together, it's then a matter of cutting the wire, putting them in between the links, gluing them, etc. But I'll go into more detail with that as and when I come to that part of the process. Another chore for any tank build is doing the wheels and the tyres. So I want to spend a bit of time on my thoughts around why tyres should be distressed and worn out, etc. In 1942, on the Russian front where this vehicle is going to be based, supplies were still coming through, but even so the tyres would still get quite worn out. That's why when you have a look on any reference photos, you'll see that the Stugs carry 2 or 3 spare sets of wheels with them. If you're going to be doing a vehicle in the desert, then obviously tyre wear is a lot more prevalent. As far as distressing the tyres go, you can be more extreme further into the war, maybe sort of 44, 45, when supplies weren't so available. Many models that I've done from that time, I'll actually do wheels without any tyres on at all. And if you want to do that with a Stug, there are quite a few resin suppliers out there where you can actually buy the wheels without any tyres on. Now, one thing about Dragon wheels that I'm often asked about, I don't know how well you can see this, I'll put a still up, is the word continue on the tyre there. Basically all it means is that Dragon, for copyright reasons, can't put the word continental, which obviously the manufacturers in Germany at the time provided the tyres for a lot of the Panzer tanks used during the Second World War. So I won't do it here because I've got to do it close up, but all you need to do with the U on the end is simply scrape off the end line of the U, and then that will change it into the word continental. For me, there are 3 levels of distressing on a tank's tyre. First off, I'll use a coarse sandy stick, making sure that when you do distress the tyre to go around in circular motions, and don't linger on one particular point, because you will create flat spots on your tyre. And so it's just a matter of keep going around 2 or 3 times until you're happy any seam lines, any sprue marks, etc. have been taken off. If you want to round the edges as well, feel free to do that, and then you'll come up with a nice rough looking tyre. So I'll do that on every single tyre. Fortunately with the this build there's only 24 tyres plus the spares to be done on this Stug, which is a damn sight better than the Trian 2 that I just did, where I had to do 58 of them. So what I'll now do is to add some further wear, some little nicks and abrasions, of which I'll probably do on about half the tyres. And for doing that I will use, in this particular instance, a little file, which is the triangular one. This is the one that I personally prefer because I do get better looking wear on the tyre with this particular one, but any type of rasping file will do. And then it's just a matter of dancing around on the tyre, getting some grooves in on the edges and along the sides, and going around carefully. Try not to damage the rim as you're doing this. And there we go. And then you've got some nice abrasions and dents there. Clean it all off with the finger, and then we'll have a look at the third stage of distressing. Now the final level of distressing that I like to do on my tyres and my tank builds is where you actually start taking chunks out of the sidewall. Probably more effective, like I say, for tanks later in the war, and obviously those in the dry western deserts. However, I've still seen reference photos of badly distressed tyres throughout the war. I try to keep it to the back wheels. I don't personally like to have it on the front wheels, but at least it's there if the viewer's looking hard enough, they can see that bit of extra detail. So all you need to do is to get a very sharp craft knife, and what you want to do is to take out thin slither of plastic. There we go. And then what you want to do is to go back over the bit that you've taken out and do little chunks. So you've basically got 3 depths. And that was again a bit dangerous doing that at arm's length, so I finished it off. These really look the part once painted up. If you put a light colour on first and then do a couple of darker washes on there, it brings out the detail really nicely. So like I say, this one's based in 1942. I'll probably just do the 2 on this particular model. But there you go, that gives you an idea of how to distress your tyres on your tank. Just adds that little bit extra detail to your model. So hopefully that's helped. Give it a try and let me know how you get on. Whilst doing the wheels, we've come across the first use of Photo Etch. I know there's quite a lot of people out there that don't like Photo Etch, mainly because of the fiddliness of it and bits getting missing, etc. I personally love the stuff and enjoy putting it on my builds. I'll try and give you a few pointers as I go along on how I do it, and hopefully that may help you with you trying the Photo Etch yourselves. We are actually getting to a stage now where a lot of new kits, you have to put Photo Etch onto them. In the olden days it was a matter of using the Photo Etch to replace a plastic part. Now you actually have to use the Photo Etch because there is no substitute. However, one of my rules is if you are able to just replace a plastic part, put the Photo Etch part together first before you take off the plastic part off the kit, just in case it goes tits up, and then at least you can still fall back on the plastic part. So this was the section, or the PE sheet should I say, from Dragon, quite nicely detailed. I may use some of it if need be. The parts that we're looking at are these curves. Those are actually going to be rims that are going to be put on the idler wheels. However, the Voyager kit, as you can see, is far superior, and they actually come as a ring anyway, so that's what we'll be using. I've had a chance to have a look through the Photo Etch from Voyager, and it's a beautiful set. There's some lovely little projects for me to do as the build goes on, so looking forward to that immensely. So here's the PE sheet that we're going to use, and we're going to need to cut out 4 rings, which are on here, as you can see. I like to use a hard surface, so I've got this old mirror here that I use. Now, to try and reduce the amount of sprue mark left on the PE sheet, if you use a very sharp blade and put it right underneath the join at 45 degrees, that reduces it right down. I'm not going to do this at arm's length because I'll lose my fingers. So as you can see, I've done one already. There's a few little leftovers on the sprue connectors, so it's just a matter of tidying that up. I forgot to mention the reason for using a hard surface is because if you put it on a soft surface, you're liable to actually misshapen the part, or to dent it even. So it's always best to do it on a hard surface. And then it's just a matter of going around. I think it was just the one. Yeah, just the one. And there we have it all tidied up. Now what you want to do is to do a dry fit, work out exactly where the actual ring is going, or any particular part that you're going to be adding on. And then when you've decided where it's going, how it's going on, and which bit is actually going to be touching the plastic surface, what you need to do is to get a file, or a sandy stick in this particular case, and sand around all of the area that's actually going to be stuck onto the piece of kit. If you can, try and get as much of the shiny gold off as you possibly can, and that will improve the adhesion onto the model. So with the PE parts all sanded and dry fitted, it's now ready to glue onto the rim. If you're going to be doing a lot of PE at one particular time, use a plastic lid, because that will keep the glue moist for longer. For whatever reason, Pringles lids seem to do the best. And then it's just a matter of applying the glue with cocktail sticks. That's what I use. And as far as the glue goes, well, there's loads of them out there, so it is really a matter of finding ones that you particularly like. I like to go for industrial strength ones, which basically means as soon as it hits the plastic, that's it, it will dry solid where it is. Other people like to use things like Gorilla Glue, which takes a few seconds to go off, which gives you a chance to move it around into position. So try whatever glues are out there, see which works for you the best. So I'm going to stick this on now. Guaranteed if I do it on camera it will go all tits up, so I'll do it off camera and show you the final result. So the first of the rear idler sections is now complete, beautifully detailed. Bit of a nasty seam line going through, but no issues there. And as you can see from the photo, it's made up of 3 parts. Now whatever you do, don't glue this particular section to the tank hull, because the actual rear idler is there to tighten or to loosen the track. So that's it there in its tight state, and then when you put your track on, you can move it backwards accordingly, and that will allow you to strengthen or to loosen the track as you see fit. It can be upwards of 1, maybe 2 links, so it's well worth helpful aid for when putting those tracks on. So just bear that in mind when building the tank. So with all the wheels done, I've started to make inroads into the hull, and with pretty much every Dragon build there's problems with the instructions. First off, there are 2 duplicate A sprues, which isn't an issue because obviously you've got 2 sets of wheels, etc. However, there is a 3rd A sprue, so there's quite a few duplications of numbers. At the moment it hasn't caused a problem because, you know, just look at the pictures. So that's one thing to be aware of. Secondly, with the axle rods which feed through the hull, obviously there's instructions here to use these ones, which are the A2s, but the other side there isn't any instructions. So again, pretty obvious, but just be aware of it. And also with pretty much every Dragon model I've done, it tells you to fill holes, to drill holes through, cut little pieces off. In my experience, don't do any of that until you desperately need to, because more often than not you end up having to stick the bits back on or fill in the holes again. So just be aware of that. As far as the hull goes itself, very nicely detailed. As you can see, wouldn't expect anything less from a Dragon kit. Beautifully detailed underneath. This was a little spare one that had to be added. I've just filled that will get sanded down later. But there we go, gives you an idea. You got lots of lovely seam lines, so very impressed with that. I've just finished off putting the plate on the front there, so that's all nice and dry. The fit has been excellent, had no issues whatsoever. Few seam lines that needed obviously to be cleaned up, but no flash or anything like that at all. As far as the wheels, that they've all been done distressed, as we talked about earlier. As far as the sprockets go, there was a nasty seam line that runs through all of the teeth, so a bit of time had to be taken to get those cleaned up. This section here is actually being added to the hull, and as you can see there is a seam line that runs all the way down. So it's just a matter of using some Vallejo plastic putty, putting that in place, letting it dry and sanding it off, so that will be fine. Once dry, I didn't obviously bother with the seam line around the actual axle hub itself, because as you can see, that will all get covered up anyway, so no issues there at all. Now for a handy hint on this particular kit, the axles, don't glue these in before you put the suspension bars on, okay, because they actually have to go in at a specific angle. Okay, so what you need to do is to fix the actual suspension arms onto the axle first, like so, then put them inside, and that will fit on to there. There's a little locating pin on the back there, so there we go. And I strongly advise you to do it one at a time. If you start cutting everything off the sprue, you're going to get a little bit confused. So one at a time, glue that in place, and job done. Now the next problem that we have is that this part here, which is A4, does not sit very well on top of the axle. So what it needs to do is to be slightly modified. This is the original piece. As you can see, there's quite a thick chunk of plastic there in the middle, and that just needs to be thinned down, and this will allow, there we go, this will allow it to sit a lot better on the axle. Just make sure you use a sharp knife. So as I've been working my way through around the hull, we've come up with our first fit issue. As you can see here, the axle rods are all nice and flush in against the hull side, but here on the top on the other side, these will not go in at all. This one here, which is the rear one, I've had to modify by scraping out the central fixing to allow these to fit in snugly. So be careful. Hopefully it's just my kit, but if it is an issue for yourself on yours, then just be aware that you may have to modify the axle rods to get them to fit in snugly. So I'm happy to report the lower hull is now complete, all very nicely detailed. The fit not so good, but no major issues. There we go. On the inside, as you can see, one of the caps is missing. That got ate by the carpet monster, but not a major issue because this is the dividing wall for the engine compartment, so that's not going to be seen anyway. On the instructions, it does ask you to cut this particular axle off. I'm just going to leave it in there for the minute just to see if that needs to be done. As you can also see, I haven't done any of the work on the rear. There's obviously the exhaust go on here, and there's a lot of fine detailing. Now because I'm now going to be doing the scratch building of the interior, this particular section is going to get manhandled quite a lot, so I didn't want to put anything on the back here because it will probably get knocked off during that particular process. So all that leaves me now to say thanks very much for popping in and having a look at this particular update on my Stug build. Thank you very much indeed for subscribing and supporting my work, and I look forward to seeing you on the next update.